Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, it's 7:24 on this Tuesday evening, and you are listening to the 4th Ready Colorado Town Hall with leading Republican candidates for governor. I'm Ross Kaminsky. If you don't know me, you should be listening to me in the mornings here on 630 KHOW. And my special guest this evening, State Treasurer Walker Stapleton, Republican candidate for governor. I want to take two more questions from people joining us by phone on education. Actually, I'll give you one because the caller dropped off, but I think it's an interesting question. When you look at the amount of money that a charter school gets from the government to fund that student's education, and this caller is under the impression that they get less than that student would get if it were in a union-run school, why don't we actually encourage more people to go to charter schools as a way to save money?
And you know, there was a funding equalization measure in the legislature. I'm for a level playing field, which is, you know, it shouldn't discriminate against. You shouldn't get less money, obviously, if you're choosing a charter school for your child. We should improve access to charters at all costs, and there should be a level playing field between people having, you know, the amount of money that they would have if they made the choice for a public school to apply to a charter, and that's really what we're trying to create here in Colorado is a level playing field.
Now, whenever people like you or I talk about school choice, there is a particular sort of question that tends to come up frequently, and I think Andrew and Parker wants to ask this kind of question. Andrew, good evening. What's your question for Walker Stapleton?
Hello. Yeah, I was just wondering, you said it was tuition-free, the public charter schools, but would that affect the funding for, like, regular public schools? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So, well, we get this question all the time.
Absolutely.
Does this drain funding?
And it does, and it's, you know, if you look at it on a headcount basis, it's money that could go into the public school. But there's other ways to think about it. There's credits that can be given back to the public school in terms of funding. It basically does create competition, but I think competition is a good thing.
And I don't know how it runs in each different place in Colorado, but I know there are some places in the country where if someone goes to a charter school and takes that money with them, that the union-run school still gets a little bit of money to try to keep the unions quiet. But,
I'm in favor of the dollars funding or following the student.
Yeah,
the dollars should follow the student.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very quickly, folks, the majority of you, not surprising, substantial majority of you do believe that education policy should be a top priority for Colorado's next governor. In fact, only 14% of you said it shouldn't be, and I'm not sure which 14% that would be, but in any case, we'll get another poll question going for you soon. Now, Walker Stapleton, to the extent that he is well known in Colorado on a particular issue, there is no doubt that issue is para, and a lot of folks have some thoughts about this, but I'd like to start with Steve. Hey, Steve, you are on with Walker Stapleton. What's your question? Go ahead, Steve. And looks like maybe we've lost Steve, but his question is pretty simple. Can you solve the para problem? But why don't you start by defining what the para problem is? And actually start by defining what para is and then what the problem is.
Para is the retirement system that more than 500,000 public workers and retired public workers rely on in Colorado for their retirement. And they get it instead of getting Social Security. But the promises are a lot more lavish than the promises that are made in Social Security. And it covers people who are K through 12 teachers. It covers higher education teachers. It covers people that are Colorado State Patrolmen. It covers state workers, such as myself. And it is the biggest debt that we have in the state of Colorado. Literally, the biggest debt that we have in the state of Colorado. And the problem has not been portrayed correctly, by the way, by the media. The media has tried to make it an issue of a Republican bashing the unions. And it's really an issue of haves versus have-nots, people that are on the take versus the people who are not on the take. And the people that are on the take are people that are members of the defined benefit pension system. And in Colorado, structurally, 99.8% of the public workers are on the defined benefit plan. They're not on the defined contribution plan. I was fortunate enough, although it might have been against my own economic self-interest, to elect to choose a defined contribution plan to invest for myself, and that's true for all state workers from 2006 on. You can select whether you can opt into a defined contribution plan and invest for your own retirement. So I did that because I didn't want to be a hypocrite and talk about the defined benefit plan being not sustainable for the state and too big a financial burden for us to bear. Even though investing for my own retirement, I haven't gotten the defined pension payout that I would have gotten if I'd been a member of the defined benefit plan. That is to say, a guaranteed 7.25% average retirement growth for the next 30 years.
Is that what the defined benefit plan promises?
Yes.
7.25% return a year?
Average return, exactly, over a 30-year time period. So your retirement growth compounds, correct, and
that's
so
insane.
Insane, right? Yes, it is.
I don't know if you know, but my
and real
background
market
is
returns,
finance,
you and I have talked about this a fair amount, and so it's against one's own economic self-interest, because if you're a defined contribution retiree, you're investing for your own retirement security, so you're getting market-based returns or more realistic returns than somebody in a defined benefit system who, regardless of what the market does, you're guaranteed a pension annuity that's going to grow a certain amount every year, and you're guaranteed a cost of living adjustment on top of your pension annuity that's going to grow every year. And it is literally bankrupting the state of Colorado in the process. And we're really making, at the end of the day, disingenuous or false promises to public workers because most of these folks are under the assumption that their retirement is going to be constitutionally guaranteed come hell or high water. But actually, the bankruptcy courts at the municipal level and state level all across this country have said, no, that's not exactly true. When there's a bankruptcy or a restructuring, you might find that you have to stand in line with other creditors, and you may end up getting 15 cents on the dollar for your pension when you thought you were going to get 100 cents on the dollar. And all the people with the unions and the pension executives who made these promises, false promises to public workers, are out the back door, leaving these people holding the bag. So I've spoken a lot to public workers, and I try and disavow them of the notion that I'm out trying to take away Betty and John's retirement. I'm trying to change the system for new and younger workers, and I'm trying to create a system where Colorado is making promises to our retirees and our public workers who we owe a huge debt of gratitude that we can actually afford to pay for, not a false promise on paper that is bankrupting our state.
You are listening to the 4th Ready Colorado Gubernatorial Town Hall. I'm Ross Kaminsky, my special guest state treasurer, Walker Stapleton. If you want to ask Walker a question, *3 on your phones. I should also mention you want to learn more about Ready Colorado, who's bringing you this hour, facebook.com/ReadyColo. And if you want to learn more about Walker, Stapleton4Colorado.com. That's the word for, F-O-R, Stapleton4Colorado.com. Let's stick with para for a minute.
Yeah.
There are a few people who have questions for you that I think are going to be kind of in the same vein, and questions that you're going to get a lot. So let's start with Jim. Hey, Jim, you're on with Walker Stapleton. What's your question?
Well, I've got a question about, first of all, I am a state retiree, and so I'm concerned about what's going on with para.
Yep.
I've got a 30-year retirement with the state. I invested a lot of my life, and
you're still around to talk about it.
So,
yes.
And in all honesty, now I even came up with what I feel like was a pretty feasible plan to really.
Jim, just in the interest of time, can you get to your question, please?
Yeah, I sent you a memo through one of the Mesa County commissioners that, unfortunately, I never got a response.
Okay.
But
shoot.
So there's a lot of proposals to help para, and you don't seem to agree with any of them. And I guess I wonder why you think everybody else's solutions are not. Reasonable or valid, and that
all right, thank you, Jim. We got the question.
So here,
Jim seems to think that maybe the para board proposed something, or I don't know what.
Well, the problem is that in 2010 we passed Senate Bill 1. And for 7 years, the pension system went around telling people that the pension problem was solved and that we needed no more money and that it was on a path towards solvency. And they also said that, Treasurer Stapleton was going around saying that more was needed just for political purposes. And I got lambasted by saying that the rate of return of 8% was too high at the time. Since then, I have played an active role in the board voting 8-7 twice, which has been very contentious, to lower the rate of return. First to 7.5, and then again to 7.25. It's still too high. But I've been an advocate of lowering it to the rate of a high-yielding corporate bond, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.5. And so the reason, Jim, that I've been frustrated with the reforms is that they've been incremental reforms. They've been fixing a problem with a Band-Aid when much deeper structural reforms are actually needed to fix the problem. And we saw this in 2010 with Senate Bill 1, which is why the PARA will be coming back to the legislature next year and asking for more money. And it's more taxpayer money. It's more money out of the budgets of our school districts. It's more money out of the budgets of our cities. And you don't have to worry about your retirement being taken away, because changing the rules of the game for somebody that's been in the system for 30 years is, first of all, fundamentally unfair. And secondly, it would be litigated till the cows come home. So it's in an inefficient and ineffective way to achieve reform. But make no mistake, we need to change the rules of the game for younger workers, younger school teachers, younger city workers, because the promises that we are making to them, Colorado cannot afford to pay for.
And so just to clarify, and again, I think you just answered this, but again, want to make it black and white. Are you saying that as a policy matter, if you were governor and there were going to be PARA reforms, that you would not change the system for anyone who's already in it, or for anyone who's been in it for more than some number of years?
The changes, the thrust of changes I would make would be for new workers entering the system for retirement age. I believe that retirement should be in line with Social Security. It is not right now. It is 58 for teachers and 60 for everybody else. And I think that if you were going to take a younger worker that wanted to be a school teacher the rest of his or her life and say, hey, here's the bad news. You're going to have to actually work longer. Jerry Brown, Ross, is on record saying that because of the public pension problem in the United States, public workers should universally work to the age of 70. So we right now in Colorado are a decade behind Jerry Brown. And I tell people, if you're a decade behind Jerry Brown in anything, it's a good rule of thumb. You have some catching up to do. So
at least he's walking the talk himself,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
he's working until he's 150.
Yeah, retirement age is one thing. Another level, Chuck Reed did in San Jose. Another Democratic mayor. He gave people the option of saying, look, you're not paying a fair price for the defined benefits you're getting in your pension right now. You are going to have to pay more to remain a member of a defined benefit plan out of your paycheck. The employee pays more, not the employer. The employer, that's the taxpayer-funded contributions of our school districts and our cities. You employee are going to have to pay more to be a member of a defined benefit system. And if you're unwilling to do that, that's okay. We're not going to take away your retirement. You're just going to have to switch to a defined contribution now and invest for your own retirement security, because the city of San Jose can't afford this. We're going bankrupt and having to curtail services. Same thing going on in Illinois at the state level, which has become a disaster of rationing services. And let me talk about this in the education vein, because I think it's really important. And this is why I'm passionate about this issue. And I think that many of the listeners tonight have heard me talk about this. And the reason I'm passionate is because it is such a burden on our school districts in terms of effectively funding K through 12 education in Colorado. Right now, there's a proposal that's going to from PARA to go back to the legislature and ask that school districts increase their contributions into PARA by as much as 4%. Right now, they're over 21% of a teacher's salary. If this proposal were to go through the legislature, as is being proposed right now by PARA, and obviously it could change during the legislative process next year, it would mean that 25 cents of every dollar we pay a school teacher goes to a retirement system and doesn't go to that teacher's salary or to an effective way of teaching that kid in the classroom. It gets siphoned off to backfill obligations in a bankrupt retirement system. But not only does the employer, the school district, match with 25 cents on the dollar, the teacher then has to match with 8%, and it could go up to as much as 12% of their salary. And so it's incredible. I mean, there's no system in the private sector that exists that require 37% or 37 cents on the dollar for contributions to sustain the system. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And it's crowding out other priorities in our school funding. And I want it to stop. And what I want to stop having happen is school districts taking money from present-day teacher pay that they may be unaware of in order to ratchet up and backfill obligations on the back end to this bankrupt retirement system.
You are listening to the 4th Ready Colorado Gubernatorial Town Hall. My guest this evening, State Treasurer Walker Stapleton. We are going to hit a short break here, a 90-second break, and here's what we're going to do when we come back. There are a lot of topics still to cover, not least of which is transportation, which we're going to start with. But what I want to do when we come back, Walker, is the possible exception of transportation. I want to do something of a lightning round with the many people we've got on the phones who want to talk to you. And so when we come back, we're going to ask quick questions and get quick answers and get as much stuff in the last segment as we possibly can. Again, you're listening to the Ready Colorado Town Hall with Walker Stapleton. And if you want to ask a question, *3 on your phones. We will be right back.